The Sciforror Film Podcast. Hello and welcome to another extra episode of the Sciforror Film Podcast. I'm Andy Walker and I am joined this episode by MJ Dixon. Hi, how you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
Good.
Now, a lot of people will know you because your films have been... You're quite prolific, and your films have kind of been a lot of festivals and things like that. There's been a lot of stuff online about your work at the moment. Can I start just by asking how you got into filmmaking, and especially how you got into making sort of horror and sci-fi type stuff?
I think when I was really young, I think I wanted to be like a writer, and the more I wrote stuff, the more I kind of thought, I'd really like to see this be a film. And then, I just ended up kind of working on some like really like crappy low budget stuff, like in my local area when I was young, and that just kind of it felt like an unachievable thing. And then just to kind of see, like, that really all it was that you pick up a camera and start making stuff. But where I grew up wasn't a particularly affluent area. It wasn't a very good environment for making films. And so, one day I just decided to leave. I moved to Lancashire, of all places, and kind of just started making stuff on my own. And like from there, it just kind of grew beyond my control, really. I just, I just kept making stuff, and people kept watching it and asking for more, and and it was and but really, just kind of, I think that I often say that it's my calling, you know what I mean? Like I never felt I was very good at it when I started, but I kind of just really I just really wanted to do it. And so every time it didn't really work out, I just, for some reason, just kept trying and trying and trying until it did. And I think that's why, how you know that's kind of like, something that you're kind of destined to do, I think.
Yeah, no, I get that. You did a degree in filmmaking and screenwriting.
That's right, yeah.
So do you feel that having done the degree gave you a better sort of base to build on, or do you think it's not a thing that's necessary if you want to make films?
Well, what I'll say is it really afforded me time. So I went to media college for 2 years, where they taught us how to make, kind of like, TV shows and vox pops and kind of all that kind of stuff. There was a little bit of filmmaking in there, but it was mostly like making stuff for commercial television and local TV stations and things like that.
Yeah.
And so, but as I was leaving, I was just chatting to, I can never remember this guy's name, and I always feel terrible because he completely changed my life. I didn't really talk to him that much when we were at college, but the last night when we all graduated, I got chatting to him in the pub, and I said, "Oh, what are you doing next?" And he said, "I'm going to go to uni." And I just kind of went, I said, "I'm just done with education." I'd done like secondary education at that point for like 5 years. And I'd finally got my A levels, and I was like, okay, I'm done. And he said, "Oh, you said, I'm just going to go and use all the nice equipment they've got for like 3 years." And I was like, this guy's a freaking genius. And I was like, of course. So I just, basically just rang down universities down the country. I kind of started close to where I lived, and just kind of until somewhere accepted me, really, through clearance. So like this was about 3 weeks before the start of term as well. And that was it. I just and my plan was basically spend 4 years just borrowing equipment and making stuff. And I just did that. And I got, I got a degree out of it. But really, what I actually got out of it was around my course. You made 2 films for your first 2 years, and then 1 film in your final year.
Right.
And so I was like, that's not a lot of films though. So around that, I made like 25 other like short films, just like, every spare moment I had, I'd be getting people together, writing scripts, just coming up with ideas on the spot, coming up with like, oh, let's try this, let's try that. But what that did really over like 4 years is just afforded me like a bunch of time to be crap at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in 2008, I made my short film, which was a 15-minute adaptation of Herbert West Reanimator, the first chapter, the
Right.
first short story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was probably the best thing I'd ever made at the time, and it was terrible. But I remember looking at it and going, okay, you've made all this stuff and it's bad. It's not professional. But why? Like, why is it not professional? And I
Yeah.
just really sat down and picked all that stuff apart and said, okay, what's wrong with it? What are you not quite getting right here? And I just basically tore all that stuff apart and then applied that to a short film called I Spy, which we
Yeah.
made for the Horror Channel competition in like 2009. And then that got picked up as one of the finalists, won a bunch of competitions, and really just kind of got eyes on me as a director. And from there, I just really started getting the question of when you're going to do like a feature film. And eventually, in 2010, I shot a film called Slasher House.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, were you always drawn to the sort of horror, sci-fi sort of stuff, or was that something that you kind of?
Like, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, my first true love in life is Masters of the Universe. So I think,
Right.
I was always into kind of like sci-fi and monsters and and that kind of thing anyway. And then as I grew older, really like I was always like I was a pretty morbid kid. I was always like interested in vampires and kind of werewolves and all that kind of thing. It's really, I unlocked a memory recently. We were clearing out my girlfriend's mum's basement, and they pulled out this book that was like a bunch of like really creepy short stories. And I was like, oh my God, I used to go to the library every night after school and sit and read that book.
Wow.
So yeah, I was just a kind of weird, morbid ass kid anyway. And then when I was 11, my mother put Halloween on in the background while she was working, and I was ill on the couch with the flu, and so I ended up watching Halloween. It was like the first proper horror film I watched, and I was terrified. But I also remember thinking to myself, "Man, what a fun feeling!" You know, um, and really, I think that's what started off, because from there, really, I couldn't get enough.
Yeah.
My kind of introduction to horror was probably like a bit of an obscure one, because what I'd do is we had a video cabinet, and I'd put a video in, set it to record on long play all night, and close the cabinet so that no one knew it was recording. And I'd get up at like 5, 6 in the morning and just I'd check the paper to see what was on, and I'd go and watch whatever kind of, weird, like, BBC Two or whatever, or
Yeah.
Channel 4 obscurities that I'd kind of, but I started doing that at about 11 years old during like David Cronenberg season.
Right.
So like some of the first horror films I ever saw were like Shivers, Rabbids, Videodrome, and like just stuff that just like,
The basic stuff then.
yeah, so I didn't get into like, really like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and all that stuff until later on. My first introduction was a lot more stuff like David Cronenberg's work. but yeah, like I was always from there really just drawn to horror stuff, and I'm a big fan of sci-fi. I'm a big genre fan generally. Like I do like sci-fi, fantasy, kind of horror. If I'm going to pick something to watch, that's kind of the order that I go in.
Right.
In terms of what I'm looking for. So
I mean, you were saying that you kind of you kind of reevaluated what you've been doing in sort of 2008, 2009. But 2009, you made a short film with a character in it you've returned to a number of times since, which is Thorn.
yeah.
So where did that idea come from? The actual character and the idea of
Well, initially, I was I, back in like kind of 2002 when I was at media college. I wanted to make like a bunch of Halloween kind of based like fan films.
right,
Just big, like I said, big fan of Michael Myers. And I even made a costume for like my friend who wanted to be like a stuntman, and and it was like a cool redesign, and he had like grey hair because it was like this is way before like any of the Rob Zombie stuff, or like it was supposed to be like it had aged really horribly, and um, and I wanted to do like a three Halloween, a three fan film series of Halloween. But the more I worked on it, the more I realized that really, like, the ideas that I was coming up with were mostly pretty fresh, apart from the fact that I'd plunked Michael Myers into it. And so I was like, "Oh, this is going to be like a lot of work for something that essentially I can never do anything with."
yeah,
And so basically, I took anything that was like not like based on history, you know, anything that essentially was copyrighted, and just kind of threw all that out and went, okay, it's like what of this stuff that I've actually used is based on like real stuff, like real history stuff,
right,
like Mayan curses and all that stuff that they introduced into the series. And I just kind of really delved into that, and I came up with Thorn, which is obviously the name is a reference to the cult in the Halloween movies. But that kind of that took on a kind of life of its own. What the other thing that happened is I'd noticed that the name Thorn appears in like a bunch of different horror franchises, and so I quite liked the idea of like, oh, so like like the idea of it's always been there,
yeah,
um, and so yeah, and so it started off just as kind of an idea of like making kind of my own slasher series, and then it just never quite materialized. And then I wrote a script for it in about 2005. And I just every so often I'd sit down with like other writers and we'd be talking about work that we were doing. And I said, oh, I've got a script for like a short film I wrote. And another writer said, oh, can I have a look at it? I showed it to him and he said, it was a guy called Paul Thomas who plays Thorn in the short. And he said, oh, this would be really easy to make, do you mind if I kind of give it like a once over, and then why don't we do this? And I was like, yeah, all right. So he
yeah,
kind of gave it like a brief kind of like polish, and then yeah, we went and shot it in like my buddy's garage, and that won the first place in the Scary or Die competition in 2009.
right,
And that was just like a big part of kind of but I knew that obviously from there the idea a little bit, but it was before kind of the idea of making a proof of concept really was a thing. But I thought, well, we've got a short film now that we can kind of say, look, we want to do like a bigger version of this, like let's do that. And then when we started making Slash House, I did a big rewrite on the script just before we started, and one of the characters ended up being amalgamated into two characters. Two of the characters ended up being amalgamated into one character.
right,
And so then we were a character short, and I just like one afternoon just kind of went, why don't I put Thorn in it? And so yeah, that was it. That was kind of his big introduction to like the wider world, I guess, which I'd never really planned. And then um, from there it was kind of like, oh, we've got to do Thorn's own movie, and we've got to do, and um, yeah, the second that began, I just was like, okay, well, it's a trilogy, obviously, and it's, and then I just came up with this kind of grand story that was kind of loosely based on this Halloween idea that I'd had like 2000 in 2002. Yeah, and I just kind of took the kind of bones of that and went, okay, like what now this is not tied to like another franchise. What can I do with it? And that became the Thorn trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, you got Thorn and you got and the Slasher House thing, but you've had spin-offs from those as well,
Yeah, yeah.
which are kind of like they you get you kind of like it's almost like it's your filmmaking has grown almost like a plant, which is the fact that it's got like it starts off with a few pieces and then kind of all have pieces that go out into other films and other things.
Yeah.
Was that is that a I mean, was it something you planned on, or was it just something that's kind of naturally
Yeah, I
happened?
think. Well, initially, I wanted to make a much bigger film. Slasher House was kind of like a way to do it because I was going around pitching this kind of like big, like not well, not big, but this kind of like something a bit more kind of epic.
Yeah,
Um, but essentially, what I realized was it was kind of the end of a story, um, and then and Slash House was kind of like a big part of that. But I was just, and so that again, I was showing that to other writers, and someone said, "Oh, this would be a really easy film to make because it's like basically like five characters in one location." And I was like,
yeah,
"Oh, right, okay, yeah, I didn't think about it like that." So then that became the obvious first film to do instead. So from there I went, okay, so how do we get from like Slasher House, which is like the creation point of all of this, to like essentially like this kind of grand ending that I'm trying to get to. And so from there in 2010, I sat down and really just took all the stories that I had that I'd been working on over the years because I thought some of them were going to be books, some of them were going to be comics, etc., etc. And I said, how does this work as a story? Like and so I came up with a plan, which was about 17 films at the time. No, 12. Yeah, 12 films at the time.
wow,
Um, and the idea was to do like two every year. And by 2017, I'd be finished and I could go off and do something else. And then we released Slasher House, and I've kind of suspected Thorn would be like popular-ish, so we were way ahead of that, and I'd already been writing these movies. But what I didn't really expect was like characters like Cleaver to be really popular,
yeah,
because they were just written as like he was written as like a kind of one note, like oh yeah, he's like like I say, he was an amalgamation of two different characters that I was just like just mash them together into like this kind of because what I wanted was something that was like really super cliched, like that you go, oh, it's a slasher villain, it's a
yeah,
clown with a meat cleaver, and I thought, and that'll be it. We'll kill him off like straight away, and that'll be the end of it. And of course, fucking, they put him on the cover when they released it, and all this stuff. And so then I kept getting, "Where's the Cleaver movie? Where's the Cleaver movie?" And so then that kind of got added to the overall kind of story. But the problem is that for balance, then I was like, oh, there's got to be three Cleaver movies now as well to balance this out.
yeah,
Um, and then, yeah, and then the same happened with like Pandemonium. We did Slash House 2, and I suspected that um, Steve the Skeleton would be the hit the standout character because it's like a big puppet thing. But it was Molly, which I'd kind of already mostly planned for, and Jacob the Killer Panda, who again
yeah,
was like another character that I wrote just what's like a quick slasher villain that she can like fight at the beginning. So we go, okay, we're establishing the slasher villains, and then he was massively popular. And the second Dave kind of came onto set and spoke to, I was like, oh, he's going to get his own film, isn't he? Like, um, and so then that kind of again like expanded the whole thing.
yeah,
So yeah, like there's been a kind of general like there's so I know all the films that exist in it, but there's been a general overall plan going, but it does evolve all the time. Like Cleaver 3, suddenly I was like, oh well, actually I can populate it with like a bunch of these characters that I've introduced in other things,
yeah,
and stuff like that. And so yeah, it's just it's a it's a constantly evolving, like like you say, like a plant. It's constantly like growing out of my control. You know what I mean? And I'm just like going like, oh right, what are we doing here? What's happening now? Okay, so it's the cleaver stuff's expanding out. Okay, well let's go and do something with that. Now the pandemonium stuff's expanding out. Okay, let's do something with that. And so yeah, it's just a constantly growing and honestly really hard to keep track of.
I can
Thing.
imagine. I can imagine. And you also got the I don't know how many there are now, the Slaypool Falls
Right?
film.
Yeah. Um, well, get that really just started as a joke. When we were now, so on April 1st, I think 2014, we wanted to announce Slasher House 2 as our next project,
Yeah.
but we were like messing around with like an iPhone 4. And like I was convinced, I was like, this is yeah, you could make a film on this, like so we shot this little trailer, like a little tiny 2 minute, 1 minute, 2 minute thing called April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
And we announced that as our new project when everyone was expecting Slasher House 2 as like a little joke. And then launched the Slasher House 2 thing. But then yeah, we got asked to do a fake trailer for Grindsploitation, the movie.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, oh well, what could we do? And I was like, oh, about that stupid April Fool's Day thing. So we kind of jumped from part 1 to part 5 and went, let's just make like a ridiculously like a trailer that basically recaps like a franchise that doesn't exist, and they've gone to the hood and space and and all this kind of stuff. And so yeah, and for about 5 years, every film that you would watch that would be on TV in the background. And I
Right.
realized like that was like a really good tool that I had. Was like something I could always put on the TV in the background of our movies was this April Fool's Day trailer. Um, but by the time we got to like film 9, I was like, you've got to stop using the April Fool's Day trailer, man. Like, and so I was like, should we go back and kind of do like the whole series? We'll start at part 1 and we'll do a trailer for that. And like, and the idea was that like, because usually you have to stop filming in like kind of November every year because it gets way too cold.
Yeah.
Like, even when you're filming indoors, most of the time, it's just very uncomfortable. And so we were like, okay, well, why don't we like every kind of March meet up, like, just a bunch of us for fun and kind of make one of these things. And it just would get us like back into like, right. And now we're off filmmaking again, like,
Yeah.
um, so that, the first time I'm not picking up a camera is like the first day on like a feature film or whatever. And so, yeah, it just became like an annual thing that we did. And we just kind of gradually started working our way through all the, and in the meantime, we kept creating lore for it, So it was like, so the first one is like this one, and the second one, like the main actress quits and she gets replaced by a lookalike who's like a Canadian singer, and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and then like, and we got all the way up to like part 10, and like, we'd just done like the Wild Wild West one, um, which has been a joke for like 10 years, like that we were like the part 7's the Wild West one, like, and yeah, so it's a bit of a goof and it's a bit of fun, but also like we try to like fold in like new skills all the time, like we shot one in 3D just to see if we could, you
Yeah.
know
I was going to say you have to attempt you have kind of like experimented with some different types of stuff, including the Slasher House 1.2 anime.
yeah. I don't know what I was thinking. um Well, it's a little bit like where in like 2008, 17, 18. I'm just looking around to see if I can see a reference point. I did like a comic book, but the only reason I did it was I always wanted to make a comic book, but I felt like I could never find the time. And so what I did is I made the comic book one of our like stretch goals for the campaign, with the idea that like should we hit that, then I will make a comic book of Slash House, and that would force me to do it. And then very much the same with like I've always wanted to try to make an anime kind of of some kind. Um, and so I just kind of made that like a part of the thing, knowing that if we hit the thing, I'd have to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and then it happened, and I was like, oh God, like, um, because I also realized really quickly I know very little about animation.
Yeah,
so,
bit of a drawback.
so yeah, like it was a bit of a kind of really like a bit of a blag, really, like but I figured it out. I was really lucky that there's kind of a bit of a community of people kind of making their own anime on the internet.
Yeah,
And so I was just like, okay, like, how do I do this? Like, and just really delved into like that, what those people were doing and going, okay, yo, all right, like I can see how theoretically, because I started hand drawing the whole thing at first,
wow.
but it just didn't look the way I wanted it to because I'm not like a professional like anime artist.
Right. Yeah,
I'm an artist, but my style just doesn't really blend with what I was looking for. Um, and so yeah, like, I just started combining like a lot of kind of like 3D animation and 2D animation but then that's where all my skills as a kind of VFX artist came into play because a lot of animation really is just compositing. Um,
yeah,
and so yeah, it was just really figuring all that stuff out, figuring out how to animate these characters and then get them into a scene and interacting and yeah. So it was yeah, it was just again like I just kind of thought if I force myself to do it, I have to do it.
yeah.
I'm glad I did. Uh, it was a big stress, but
One of the things that I really like about your films is the fact that, I mean, it's there is very little uh, of you leaning on sort of like CGI and all that kind of stuff. It's very much practical effects and kind of like things like that. And I've always think that they look better, especially in horror and sci-fi. I think practical effects look so much better than anything else.
yeah, I think even crappy practical effects looks better than like good CGI. I mean, that's not to say that we have to. Sometimes there's just no bones about it.
Yeah,
Like there's a lot of stuff like explosions and gunshots. Like, and I get people saying, "I'll bring an armorer down and we'll fire blanks," and I'm like, "No, thank you." Like, you
yeah,
know, if there's a safer way to do it and it involves that, then fine. Um, you know, and there's a bunch of times when like CG stuff has saved my ass when it just an effect just really hasn't come off on set or whatever.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
think if you can do it practically, that is definitely a better way to do it. And over the years, I've kind of really built up my skills doing that. Last year when we did Hexagon, I finally like bit the bullet and was like, okay, we're gonna figure out tubing for blood. Like that's like that's what we're gonna do this time. And I did, so the bit where he gets his fingers cut off in the thing, like I built like a tube system and everything and we carried it around to every set for a week because we weren't quite sure when it was going to be shot. So this
oh,
hand in a box with all these tubes hanging out of it was like coming to like every set every person's house we went to. They were like, "What's in the box?" Oh, you know.
yeah,
Um, and there was this tube, this hand with just all these tubes kind of hanging out of it everywhere we went. But yeah, it was it was that was good fun and like I'm forever trying to figure out the practical stuff. On Slash House 3, we did like a laser cage. And honestly, the sensible thing there was just to put it in post.
yeah,
But I refused. I was like, can I do this for real? And I bought as many laser pens as I could get for like a reasonable price.
yeah,
And we taped them all to like a bar and just basically like kept pumping smoke in over and over again to try and catch these lasers. And it was all because I wanted her to be able to touch this thing and you see it in her interact with it. And I thought, just how am I going to do that in post?
yeah.
And so yeah, I'm gonna make this work, and it took us 8 hours to set up this
Wow.
thing, and like obviously the smoke would last maybe seconds as it passed over, and then the lasers would disappear again. So we had to shoot the scene so many times so that I knew I'd always had a clear take of the lasers invisible while she was saying specific lines, and it's
Uh,
just madness. But I'm really glad we did it. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. No, I can see that. I mean, I saw a few of your short films and things before this, but the first time I managed to see one of your films completely and actually sit and watch it properly was not this year, but last year at the Romford Horror Film Festival. I watched The Wrath of Thorn.
all right, yeah.
And that I thought that was brilliant. I thought it was an excellent film. Really
Oh,
worked, really good, really works well. And this year I got to see. I actually missed your films a lot of the time, but I did get to see one of the episodes of Hexagon,
all
which
right,
I
yeah.
thought was really good.
Well, thank you.
Um, and that's the thing you're having a bit of a thing with at the moment, isn't it? You're
Yeah.
trying to make sure you've got enough money to finish season 2 of Hexagon.
Yeah, so it's just yeah, so as you say, we're running a crowdfunder at the minute to kind of just really pick up the slack on it a little bit. I mean, most of the stuff is kind of self-funded. Season one, basically, um, we had like another production company kind of bolstering some of the costs, but main outside of that, everything I was just basically paying for, um, you know, out of my own pocket. And that was my plan this year. And then the job that I work for just basically reduced my hours to like
Yeah.
um not like more than a third, like about an eighth of what I'd usually earn. And so I was like, oh, so that was a problem. And
Yeah,
then the other funding didn't come through, and I was like, oh, right. So now we're like a month into kind of pre-production on this now, and now it's gonna die. And I thought, well, I mean, that happens, you know what I mean?
yeah,
But the more I sat and thought about it, the more I thought, but it's really good what we've come up with. Like, and like it really what like it just I thought I can't. Like,
no,
and so what I thought was, okay, I'll take one shot at it. And if we can't raise like literally like the absolute minimum to get people there, because ultimately, as long as I can make sure people are like have somewhere to sleep and enough to eat and all that and can get there, then anything else I can usually figure out, like even if it's a bit rough around the edges, I can usually kind of go, right, okay, how do I make this out of nothing? Like that's kind of like
yeah,
Jack, who's the producer on Hexagon, calls me the MacGyver of horror. Because like, they'll go, we need something like this. And I'll go, give me 2 seconds. And I'll go into a room with like zero resources and I'll come out with, a severed head or whatever. And they'd be like, where did
yeah,
that come from? So I was like, okay, like it'll be hard, but I think we can do that. So it was really just a case of, I thought, we'd raised like a quarter of the budget. So
yeah,
I thought if we can get to 50%, I think we can. It'll be hard. It'll be really hard, but I think we can do it. And so I said, right, well, look, let's just try and get up to 50%. If we can get there, I think that at least we can afford to get everyone there, and everything else is just, essentially on my shoulders to try and make happen.
yeah,
Um, but I really didn't know if it was going to come off. And I was willing to accept that if it didn't, then we'd have to let it die, but I really did think it was worth that one last shot, and so we took it, against my better judgment, I think, because I try to do only one crowdfunder a year,
yeah,
and obviously we've got another film this year that we want to do, so I was like really resisting doing a crowdfunder like this early on, but I thought I've been left with no choice really, so but people have really come through for it. you know, in a big way. And yeah, that's just been, you know, something
Yeah,
really kind of um, really touching, to be honest. Because also, I think I was in a place where I thought, like, when you talk about the plant, like maybe the plant's got too big and like people just can't be bothered to look at it anymore. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Maybe the plant is just like it's so outspread now that people just don't care. Like, you know, and you do that's a worry all the time because you want to be creative and you want to kind of tell all these stories, but at the same time, like, you know, like you don't want it to be overloading for people, and you don't want to outstay your welcome too much. And you know, like there's all I think with any filmmaker, there's a worry that you'll outstay your welcome. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and
I get that.
especially with we're a franchise that just like never would have existed in like the studio system because
Yeah,
you know we I don't think a film like Slasher House one would have existed in the first place, but even if it did, would have you know demanded a sequel and you know like in on Hollywood terms, but because we just made it on pennies and you know it just attracted the right amount of people for us to be able to kind of say, okay, there's an audience here to make more stuff. Like, but you do worry that because the audience is so small and the way people intake media now has changed so much that you do worry that like you know does it spread out too far and
yeah,
do
yeah.
people lose interest, you know?
I mean, I've found that the independent filmmaking sort of community, and especially when it comes to horror stuff, there does seem to be a lot of people who are willing to kind of lend a hand or kind of back people up and that kind of thing. A lot more than you would find, I think, in a lot of other cases.
No, yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it is uh, a really good community, you know, and I think you know, I think mostly we've all kind of just done whatever we can to help each other out, you know, like, and it's a big part of it is obviously never forgetting who helps you out when you're in a rough spot, you know, like,
Yeah,
and you know, we've always repaid that favor, like, you know, in the other direction as well. And I think that's important as well. You know, you've got to, if you, if you're kind of receiving the benefits of it, you've got to also make sure that you're giving back to that community as well. And I think that's also really important. Yeah. And it is just really like, you know, like it is really like a community that's very kind of family orientated, you know, and that's good. It's really good.
yeah, it is. I really like it. So, okay, apart from Hexagon, I saw online you've got three films in pre-production. You've got a short film called Kill Will.
Oh God.
Uh, then
Yeah.
you've got Pandemonium Incorporated and Werewolves of London, which interests me.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Let's delve into all this. So, Kill Will has been on the cards since 2023.
All right.
Um, and it honestly, it's just been a case of getting Will in a place where we're not doing something else and just getting it done. Because we've had it for, yeah, what, coming on 3 years now. And it's been every year we've gone, okay, if we're not too busy, between like September and December, we'll do it then. And then we both end up like flat against it, getting these films in um, for you know the various festivals and stuff. And so yeah, we usually like finish working at like you know Christmas Eve, um, and then January begins, and you're just back at it again, you know. And it's so yeah, it's just been on the back burner. I promised him that it would be this year, so you know. But yeah, it's just a short film. It started off as an in joke because Will dies in so many movies.
Right.
Um, and then so it's yeah, it was just like a little short film that we kind of came up with based on the fact that Will dies in every film that he's in and why that might be, you know. And
Right.
so that's fun. Pandemonium Incorporated is the other film that we'll be looking to try and get off the ground kind of for the summer. Um, so that'll be our main feature this year, I think. Just a sequel to Pandemonium.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's just like you know, it's I try to make every film. even if it's a sequel to another film, I try to kind of keep it fresh. So it's a completely different kind of direction again. On the last thing that we did, the tone's the same, but the idea is
Yeah.
more fun, I think,
Okay.
if that's possible. And then Wales of London is so yeah, it's a film I wrote with a writer called Grant Kempster years ago, and we had a load of meetings about it kind of being picked up by various distributors and
Mm.
stuff. But it's just one of those things that like we didn't find a good fit for the one distributor that was really interested. Like we were really worried about um their what's the word I'm looking for? Like their reputation as like being, you know, uh, uh, essentially ruining the film. So we were like, okay, maybe we'll hold off on that. So it will happen. It's part of a series of movies that we've kind of been developing for a long time. And to be honest, if it hadn't been for the distribution deal, it wouldn't be up there because it's something like we've been sat on for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But also we were conscious that the title was pretty good, and so we wanted to make sure that kind of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there must have been. It did. I looked at that and thought, oh, what's that? What's that one?
So we
Um,
wanted to make sure we got like a stamp on it as well, like so it's there. It's kind of the scripts out there, registered and all that stuff. So it's
cool.
it's pretty much ready to go, but it's just it's not like most of our films are made on like $5,000,
Well, I
and
mean,
that is a bit more of a.
I was saying at the beginning that you're quite prolific. I mean, most years you seem to do sort of like 5 or 6 films within a year,
Yeah, I try
and
to.
that's quite good going, I think.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's set up like so we have like a Patreon, um, which is we set up so because I spent about 10 years, well, just under 10 years making like feature films, and what I realized was I wasn't making shorts anymore, and I was like, that's like a really important part of making movies is kind of just developing ideas through short films,
Yeah, yeah,
but what I realized was like really like doing that and trying to fund feature films as well was just not feasible. And so we kind of set up the Patreon so that we could produce like I think 2 or 3 short films a year. So that ends up being like the Staple Films Day. We always do like a Halloween special, and we try to do something else in between that as well, like that's kind of an original thing, which for the last 2 years is supposed to be Kill Will, but obviously it hasn't worked out that way. So yeah, like just we're always kind of trying to it's a really good way to kind of just keep your like it's like a workout or an exercise, like a filmmaking exercise in like
yeah,
storytelling and kind of like and all that kind of stuff. And it's a really good kind of form of telling a story, and I really enjoy it. So
yeah,
but that means that we automatically make 2 films like as bog standard every year, and then we end up with the web series. Now we end up doing that as well, which is 3 episodes, and then I also try to do 2 features of a canon a year. I mean, it's not always possible. Um,
yeah,
Finance dependent and all that. But that really, genuinely, that's the only thing that really holds us back is that, um, money comes through so slowly in the independent film world that, like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, like because I mean, really, genuinely, like last year we went from Hexagon 1 month, 3 week break. I say 3 week break. I had 3 weeks of pre-production, and then we jumped onto Bannister Doll Heist.
yeah,
And then I came off that 3 weeks later. After 3 weeks of pre-production, we were on Cleaver 3. Like so. We realistically, like, we could if the finance was there, and that was possible because we lined up the finance kind of ahead of time.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so if the finance was there, we'd probably end up making so much more. But we're limited by our resources really.
yeah.
Uh,
No, I get that. I get that. Okay. So, I mean, I'm assuming that the plan is just keep going with making more films, developing ideas, and seeing where they lead you.
Yeah, but basically, I'll just keep doing it until I die. That's the I think that's the plan. Yeah, like I say, we're doing Pandemonium 2 this year, and then there's another film that we're trying to get off the ground this year that I don't know if it's going to happen yet. It looked like it really was. It looked like this was the year. I've been trying to make it since 2012. And I thought, this is the year. This is like, Kill Will on steroids, how long
Yeah,
it's been going on for.
there's
Um,
always there's always something that gets in the way, though, isn't
yeah,
there?
absolutely. But it is making big strides now. So it's been one of those ones where we've been offered the finance for it. And I thought, oh, well, it could do with the extra money. And then that's fallen through. And I've gone, okay, well, let's wait till we've got the proper money to do it. But eventually you kind of just go, you know what? Just why am I waiting for someone to give me permission to go make this? Like,
Yeah,
just go and do it on your own. Like, like the finance stuff after a certain level makes very little difference. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like the ingenuity to make it all happen is the same. So, yeah, and then I have like a big plan to like kind of like I don't know whether tie everything up, but at least kind of like bring everything together. Like so, yeah. I mean, you might have noticed that in our films, there's something peppered in there that's kind of leading to something.
right.
And so, yeah, I want to get to that, do that, which is kind of the thing that started all this in the first place. And then, my plan really is to just float through life and every year go, should we make a Cleaver movie this year? Like,
Yeah,
should we do
yeah,
another Thorn movie? Like, and just do like, where should we take, where should we take Thorn this year? Like,
cool.
give him his own planet or, or whatever, or like, let's go to Atlantis or I don't know, like
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
yeah, like whatever takes our fancy really, like, and that's kind of the plan from there is just to kind of then once we've established, once I feel like everything's kind of wrapped up in a kind of in this big story that I've been telling for 20 years. Once all that's kind of comes to like a conclusion, then yeah, it'll be fun just to kind of go, right, let's do this, let's do that, let's do 3 films this year focusing on like a theme or whatever, and we'll do like space or
yeah,
girl power or whatever. We'll pick a theme and we'll do some movies based on our characters and stuff. And because now, like with Slash House 3 and stuff, we've introduced so many different characters. It's really easy to go, oh, I want to do a Blair Witch kind of movie, right? I can pick a character that would suit that and go,
yeah, yeah,
let's go
yeah,
make that, you know.
yeah.
And so yeah, that's the plan, is just to keep doing this till I keel over. Which, if I keep doing it at the rate I'm doing it, it might not be that long. But
Well, I've got to say, I mean, I look for everything I've ever seen by you. I've always thought it's been good, and I
thank you.
look forward to seeing more in the future at film festivals or online or wherever.
Thank you.
Everybody out there, keep an eye out for Hexagon at the moment, so while they're trying to do their crowdfunding, and future films from MJ Dixon, and it's Maichu.
Maiko.
Sorry.
Maiko.
Myco, is that how you pronounce it? I've never
Yeah.
understood it, never knew
Oh
how you
yeah,
pronounce it.
honestly, it's been a 22-year battle of
Okay.
mispronunciation.
Myco films. So keep an eye out for those. I will put links up to social media and other stuff like that, as I always do. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. It's been really great chatting to you. And everybody out there, thank you for joining in. Keep an eye out, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Thanks.
The Sciforror Film Podcast.